sorry. My name is Tegan Aline,
My name is Melanie Neves.
and we are back in the world of fantastical fairy tales for this season. And today we're going to be talking about, I think, I feel like this is one of the most classic of our classic tales, even though we've covered so many. And that is the story of Rapunzel. And
Mm-hmm.
I say that I feel like this is like quite classic because first of all, like I didn't even realize like this is gonna sound dumb. I didn't even realize Tangled was the Disney version of Rapunzel. Number one.
Oh, really?
Never watched it.
Okay.
Never watched it.
I never
Um
watched it either, actually. Yeah.
yeah. But I'm just so very I think that even without that movie, it stands alone and like if you hear the word Rapunzel, like what do you think of? You tell me what you think of.
I just think of a tower and really long hair.
Exactly, exactly. The minute you hear Rapunzel, you see a tower and you see super long, probably blonde hair coming out of it. Maybe someone's
Yeah.
climbing up of it. Maybe someone's not.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? That's what you see, a tower with hair. And
Yeah.
that is kind of like the standalone motif of this story. And it really kind of tells the story all in itself, you would think. But I think that that's so interesting because it's kind of like what we saw with the Arthurian legends. It's one of those stories where you kind of know the story just from hearing the name, but then also like maybe you don't actually remember the full amount
Well,
of that story.
yeah, because to be completely honest, I don't really remember ever having read Rapunzel too much. It didn't really appeal to me. And I
Mhm.
don't know why. And so yeah, now I think of Rapunzel and I'm just like, okay, someone locked in a tower, evil queen, prince comes, rescues, climbs up. Yay,
Yeah,
damsel saved.
yeah. You mean a girl being locked in a tower away from society didn't appeal to you? I can't possibly understand why.
It's like another Sleeping Beauty story. It kind of just doesn't appeal to me. I don't
Yeah.
understand how they became so popular.
Well, I think, and I think that's kind of well, remember Sleeping Beauty, I think you did Sleeping Beauty when we
I did, and it's creepy as fuck.
it is creepy as fuck. And so I think that's kind of part of the reason why they become popular even
Yeah.
in doing
Cautionary
the
tales.
even in doing the research for another one of this season's podcast, it's kind of like it's half cautionary, but also it's half like shit that was actually happening
Yeah.
at a certain
Yeah,
point in
and
time.
if you're lucky, you'll be well. In Sleeping Beauty's case, it was if you're lucky, you'll be raped by the prince, and then everything will be okay. Luck
Yeah,
favors the lucky.
yeah, that's
What
such
a
a
moral!
weird.
That's just like, hey, life is hard. Get used to it.
This is if we just take the prototype of the fairy tale and imagine it in the world of Game of Thrones, all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But like I really think for these stories that are kind of like unappealing to us as girls, because let's be honest, they're shitty towards women. Like I
Yeah,
think that's probably why they had popularity at some point in time, right? Because it was something that
yeah,
was
for sure.
actually happening. So
But
like what? Go ahead.
I
Were
was
you-
just gonna say, but I imagine just like sleep. The story of Sleeping Beauty is quite sinister. I imagine that Rapunzel is probably the same way, but I've never done any research. I don't actually know the true story of Rapunzel, but I imagine it's got an ick factor to it as well.
it's less. I mean, other than like blatant captivation,
Great.
or captivation isn't the right word. Sorry, captivity. Other than
Yeah, yeah,
obvious
yeah.
captivity, it's not as it's actually kind of it's a weird story, but it's not like super dark or sinister. I don't think actually.
Okay.
And so yeah, okay, we'll just get into a little bit of the history on it. So like so many of the stories we've covered before, we've got the three usual suspects, right? In of Germany, France, and Italy. Let's
Yeah,
start with
yeah.
that. So the story originally is published in the series that the Brothers Grimm produced in 1812, which is also adapted from the French version called Personette that was written by Charlotte Rose de Camont de la Force.
Hmm.
And yes, she was part of the Versailles court. And yes, she was a contemporary of Charles Perrault.
Okay.
But her story, and there's actually something interesting in that, but I'm going to go into it later. But her story was also adapted from the Italian story called,
What?
yes,
I was just gonna say, is this our friend
yes.
Jean Battista Basile?
Yay! I was hoping you'd say the name, so why would it have to? I was actually going to ask you. Yes, so he originated, like, I
Ah,
say
okay.
originated, but the story is actually an old Italian folk story, and the story was called Petrocinella. You say it because your Italian
I
accent.
don't know what the story is. I don't know how it's
No,
spelled.
just say Petrocinella. It's spelled Petrosinella. Now do it with your nice Italian accent. It's so
I
nice.
don't. Petrosanilla?
Yeah,
I
there
don't
you
know.
go. I'm
That's
sure
not
that that's
right. I'm sure that that's not right.
I think so. I think it is right.
Okay.
Well, I don't know for sure. The Italians can yell at us. It's okay. I didn't look up the meaning this time, just to be honest, because I accidentally forgot that. So sorry. So, like I said, we're seeing the usual suspects in the retelling of these stories. Um, but what I found really interesting about this is kind of like a key element that, like you said, like you kind of said, this is what I think of when I think of this story. And it's exactly what I think of as well. But
Hmm.
there's a key element of this story that's also like often kind of left on the wayside. And it's kind of like how this girl gets in the tower in the first place.
I imagine there's an evil queen. No? Or a dragon. One or the other.
It actually starts with a pregnancy craving,
Oh,
which I
interesting.
know a
Okay.
lot about right now. And I guess I can say that because this will be coming out when I've made the announcement that I'm actually pregnant right now. And Mel's been super patient with me as I've been going through fucking hell over the last 3 months. But I know all too well about a pregnancy craving at this point. And when they hit, they fucking hit hard. So on that note,
So
I'm
it's
gonna
about a
read.
pregnancy craving.
Yes, it's
That's
crazy.
wild.
Anyway, I'm gonna retell the story now. So once upon a time, there was a woman and her husband. They're just like normal people, and they've been wishing for a child for many, many years, and they weren't able to conceive. And finally, the woman was able to conceive, and she became pregnant with a child. The husband and the wife, they lived next to a very large, extensive, high-walled flower and herb garden belonging to a sorceress or a witch,
Oh,
which
don't
which
steal those
tracks
herbs.
which tracks because
Oh no.
witchy types love a good garden.
Mhm. Mhm.
So in this time, they're living next to this massive garden, and the wife is having a craving for something called Rapunzel. And if you look up what that is, it's either there's a couple different variations of what it could be, but I thought this was really interesting because I had no idea about this. It could be, do you know what lamb's lettuce is? We call it mâche in French. It's like
I
the
don't think so.
tiny, oh man, I wish I had some to show you. It's so good. It's just these tiny little lettuces that are super tiny. And
Lamb's lettuce?
I think in English it's called lamb
Oh.
lettuce or lamb's ear lettuce or something.
Oh, I know, like mashed rosette. Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes. I know
we call
exactly
it
what you're
we call
talking
it
about.
mash in French.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
I have that on my that's like the lettuce that I get all the time, but it's also called mash.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, I
So
don't know. Yeah.
so it's either that, but also in the French and Italian variations, the title of the story is actually the word for parsley.
Oh.
Yeah. So in the French and Italian version, what the girl is craving, what the mother is craving, is parsley. And I
Huh.
immediately, I guess because of where I'm at right now, can like I immediately kind of empathize with her because like when you crave like greens at this point in
Yeah.
pregnancy, it's like really intense. So obviously this is not a situation where you can just go to the store and buy it. So anyways,
Yeah.
the mother, she sees it growing in the garden and she's basically refusing to eat anything else. Food aversions in pregnancy also very real, and I also have had way too much experience with that over the last 3 months. I know it's because I'm pregnant right now, but when I started reading this, I was like, this poor woman, she's starving. So she refuses to eat anything else, and because of this she's actually beginning to waste away, which absolutely feels real, and it can happen when you feel like you can't deal with food. It feels so hard to be able to eat anything, especially when you're dealing with nausea and stuff. Anyway, so her husband is actually like fearing for her life. And so one night he scales up and down the garden wall
Oh
to steal the
no.
Rapunzel for her. When the man returns home, his wife makes a salad out of the Rapunzel and eats it. But the next day, the wife wants more. So her husband returns to the garden that night and steals some more. And as he scales down the wall, the sorceress slash witch catches him and accuses him, rightfully, of theft. The man begs for mercy and explains his wife's condition. The sorceress agrees to be lenient, allowing the man to take the Rapunzel he wants on the condition, and this is where it
Mm.
gets weird, that the baby is given to her when it's born.
And he agreed to this. I can make another.
He's desperate to save his wife, so he agrees.
Okay.
Which just feels sad all the way around. But like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know why they just didn't. I feel like they could have just maybe asked. I don't know. Maybe they knew. There's no notation on whether or not she was like a good, or I guess she wasn't good, but there whether they knew she was good or not. Like nobody just tried asking her if they could have some. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that seems. Oh,
Anyway.
yeah, there's a lot of things that don't really make sense. And okay, so the pregnant woman is actually legitimately dying of hunger,
Yeah, because she
I
just can't
guess.
eat anything else. So and obviously that sounds
Ugh.
extreme, but I want to say that from the last 3 months, I know that there's certain things like sometimes all food just feels like you don't want to look at it. It just, oh God, like I can't even talk about it, and I still actually feel sick thinking about it. So it's a real thing. Like maybe not everything, but it's a
Yeah.
real. Food aversions are the worst. They're fucking horrible.
Okay, so
Especially,
he's
yeah.
like,
And parsley is really good for your blood and for your stomach. So there might be a reason why she was particularly
she's
craving that.
craving it. Okay, so he's like, all right, I guess I'll give you my baby in order to save my wife.
You know,
And
that's,
again, I can make another.
yeah. So desperate, he agrees to this. And when the wife gives birth to a little baby girl, the sorceress takes her to raise her as her own and names her Rapunzel after the plant the mother had craved, which is shitty on so many levels.
Okay. All right.
Rapunzel grows up to be a beautiful child with long golden hair, and when she turns 12, the sorceress locks her up in a tower in the middle of the woods, with neither stairs or door, and the only one room in the and a one window at the top of the tower. In order to visit Rapunzel, the sorceress stands at the bottom of the tower and calls out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, that I may climb up thy golden stair."
Wow.
That's a rhyme, but it's important. Because whenever Rapunzel hears that rhyme, she fastens her long braided hair to a hook in the window before letting it fall 20 yards to the ground, and the sorceress climbs up. I feel like if you had 20 yards of hair, that would hurt your scalp.
That's impressive.
That would
Like, what do
hurt.
you even do? That would hurt in a lot of different ways. I don't.
Yeah, it's weird.
Anyways, okay.
That feels like
Okay.
child abuse to me personally. But
Yeah, it
anyway,
doesn't, it's not good.
So a few years later, there's a prince riding through the forest, and he hears Rapunzel singing from the tower, and the and he's entranced by her ethereal voice because like who doesn't love a maiden like up in a like this is the shit that
Wait,
these
wait, wait. Hold
stories.
on. Hold on. Hold on. I have a question. I have a
Sure.
couple of questions.
Hopefully, I can answer them.
Do we know how Rapunzel feels about being locked in a tower at this point? Like does and like do we know why this sorceress decided to lock her in a
Lock her in
tower
a
all of a
tower.
sudden?
Well, we don't know how she feels because the story doesn't actually like get into it
Yeah.
in depth, other to say that she's
It's the same thing
lonely.
with Sleeping Beauty. We don't know how she feels about like having
So,
babies.
yes. So we don't know exactly the details of how she's feeling, but she is lonely and she does want, to be out in the world. She's feeling isolated. Um
Okay. And why did the sorceress decide you're 12 um and I've raised you as my own child, but I'm now going to lock you in a tower?
this is something I wanted to get into a little bit later, but would you believe me if I
Okay.
said it's okay, it's fine. We can talk about it now. It doesn't really matter. But would you believe me if I said she's too beautiful? This is
Oh,
kind of like the theme
okay.
behind the major theme behind the story of Rapunzel is kind of like about overprotective parents who are trying to protect their children from getting married or like suitors. There's a whole bunch of like
Okay.
historical
So
references.
it's overprotection rather than women being like, no, she's too beautiful and I'm gonna like put her down.
This is what it like if you look at all of the other stories that are around there that are like Rapunzel, very often it's actually like a king locking up one of his daughters.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever
Okay.
reason, the king's like, I don't want her to marry this particular person or be in this particular situation. So
I'm sure
it's
Freud would have something to say about that.
yeah, yeah. That's that's what I was kind of just about to say. Like, I'm sure, like, I don't know. It definitely doesn't seem like the right way to go about things. And yeah, quite Freudian, actually. You're probably right. So,
Okay, continue. Sorry.
anyways, so it's fine. Interlude. A few years later, the prince rides through the forest and he hears Rapunzel singing from the tower. He's entranced by her voice because princes love this stuff. And he searches for her and discovers the tower, but he can't figure out how to get in. The prince returns to the tower very often, listening to Rapunzel's song, and now he's like locked in on her. And one day he sees the sorceress, so he's hiding in the forest, and he sees the sorceress visit her, and as usual, like as she usually does, and he learns in that day how to gain access because apparently Rapunzel, because she's so isolated, she can't tell the difference in a man's voice or a woman's voice. So as long as she
Okay.
hears Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your golden hair so I can climb up thy stair or whatever,
Maybe she's just
she,
like a little tone deaf.
how
I
could
don't
she
know.
hear anything with all of that hair? I don't
Fair
know.
point.
It's a lot. So,
Yeah.
anyways, he realizes that if he says that, he'll be able to get in and he'll be able to climb up her hair. So when the sorceress leaves, the prince kind of bids Rapunzel to let down her hair. And thinking she's the sorcerer, thinking the prince is the sorceress for whatever reason. Um she lets down her hair and the prince climbs up. And of course, she's never seen a man before since she was 12. And she's a
Okay.
teenager now and hormones. And she's
Oh,
like, wow, you just came and you just climbed up my hair. Thanks. Like, they fall in love. Uh,
you look hot.
you look
Oh, those
good.
muscles.
Human person. Whoa, you can climb.
Whoa.
yeah,
The bar is real low.
yeah, yeah. Heck yeah. So so anyways, they secretly get married. I don't even know how that's possible while she's in a tower, but whatever. We
They
don't know.
maybe they just like hand fast or something.
Yeah, just between the two of them. Um
Yeah.
the sorceress revisits the Rapunzel by day. So the couple plans a means of escape in the evening. and the prince will bring his wife a strand of silk every night until she has enough to make a ladder for her to climb down the tower and ride away with him. So the idea is I don't know like why he didn't just why one strand per night? Like just bring more. You know what I mean? Anyway, okay.
Also, there's so many hairs on the human head.
She can't I guess she
It
can't
can
climb down
take
her
so
own
long.
head. Yeah, just cut
No, but
your
like,
hair
isn't
and
it?
braid that shit.
That's, that's yeah, yeah. What the hell? Okay,
Anyways, it's a man's plan. We're not men
I'm gonna.
here, I
I'm
swear,
not gonna comment on that.
but
It's a poorly thought out plan on both sides.
he's just
Let's
a
just say.
prince, you know. He's not really like a put things together kind of guy.
I
Anyway,
guess
so
she's been too sheltered to have any other thought.
yeah.
Okay,
So
continue.
he brings her a piece of silk every night, and like she's slowly building this thing. So before the couple's escape plan can come to fruition, the sorceress visits one day, and Rapunzel innocently asks her why all her clothes are tight around the waist. And this part, yeah. So yeah, so this part comes from the original 1812, or I say the original, but the first published, or no, not even the first published, the Brothers Grimm fairy tale. But in later editions of the fairy tale, she just, Rapunzel just in her forgetfulness asks why it's easier for her to drop the prince than the sorceress.
Okay.
She's dumb on a whole nother. Maybe I need to watch Tangled to get some like
Uh,
genuine context of this. Anyway, so
well, I'm sure it's different.
either way, she calls the sorceress fat. The sorceress ain't having it, and she's like, "That's not good." Like she gets mad, and then and in this anger, the sorceress decides to cut off Rapunzel's hair and kicks her out of the tower. She just banishes her into the wilderness to fend for herself. And so when the
Wow.
yeah, so she's off in the wood, now bald and just kind of like wandering around. Maybe not bald, maybe like a nasty pixie cut.
Oh my god.
I don't know why this is so funny. It is funny
Um,
though. Like it's bad.
yeah.
It's really awful, but it's making me laugh like so hard. It's a really bad thing.
Oh my gosh.
Anyways, so that evening the prince comes to kind of like enact their escape plan, and so the sorceress, the witch, has Rapunzel's hair, right? Because she cut it all off. So she hooks Rapunzel's hair to the hook and lets it down for him to climb up. When he gets to the top, to his horror, he finds himself meeting the sorceress instead of Rapunzel. After
Oh
the
no.
sorceress tells the prince in a rage that he will never see Rapunzel again, he throws himself from the tower. So he's devastated because, like we said, he's not sharpest tool in the shed, this prince, but he's a sweetheart, maybe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's devastated. So he throws himself from the tower, and he lands in a patch of thorns. And because he
Oh.
lands in a patch of thorns, he does survive, but the thorns blind him.
Okay. Breaks
So
his fall, but
yeah, it's a bummer. It's a bummer. So a month later, in the wilderness, turns out Rapunzel is pregnant, and she gives birth to twin children that belong to the prince, a boy and a girl.
all these people having twins.
Yeah, I know, right? For some years, the blind prince wanders through the wastelands of the country. So this guy is just blind, wandering around in the forests, in the
Yeah.
wastelands, like not knowing what to do with himself. That sounds real. And eventually he gets into the wilderness where Rapunzel has been living with her children.
Mm-hmm.
One day, because somehow Rapunzel manages to hold it down in the forest, delivers two babies, and is like, I can build a cabin and cut my own umbilical cords. Fuck it.
I mean, I believe the cutting own umbilical cords more than building a cabin. However, she could probably grow a garden.
she's got to live under something. I don't know. Maybe they're in a cave. Who
Yeah.
knows? I'm not sure. But
Mm,
anyways, turns out she's more resourceful than we thought.
good for her.
um, yeah, I'm glad. Maybe being cast into the wilderness forced her to like mature in some way. Anyways,
Yeah.
so he's, finally the prince, he stumbles into the wilderness where Rapunzel has been living with their children. And one day Rapunzel starts singing and the prince hears her voice again. And so he starts following
Mm.
her voice until he comes to her. And when she sees him, they're finally reunited and he kind of like falls into her arms. And she's so happy to see him that she sheds tears. She starts to cry. And two of her tears fall into the eyes of the prince, and that restores his sight.
How?
Ma- Magic. Hello, it's a fairy tale. I don't care if it doesn't make sense. I really think that's so beautiful.
It's
I like that
lovely.
part. I really like that part.
It's lovely. No, it's lovely. It just okay.
The
All
math is,
right.
I get it. The math is not mathing, but
Well,
it's
it's also when the queen cast her out. I'm like, wouldn't she hang around knowing that the prince was going to come? Wouldn't she like hide and hang around in the vicinity so that she could be
yeah,
like, by the way, she kicked me out. Let's go.
a lot of context missing in these early stories, you know what I mean?
But it's lovely. It is a lovely sentiment.
I
Yes.
love
True
that
love's
idea. It's so
tears.
pretty. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a nice one. It's like the prettiest part of the whole story. Anyways, so his sight is restored, and the because true love, that's kind of like always the thing in these stories. True love
Of
conquers all,
course.
whatever. And the prince takes Rapunzel and their children to his kingdom, where they live happily ever after. Never mind, he's been gone for years. We don't know what's going on there since then, but that's more our theory, and that's not really for us to know. And that is the end of Rapunzel. There is another version
Okay.
of the story with a revelation that the sorceress has untied Rapunzel's hair after the prince left from the tower, and it slipped from her hands. So there's another
Mm.
version where he actually climbs out through the hair, but then she unties it and it slips. And that's
And then
and
she's trapped.
yeah, and then she's trapped in the tower. And that's how, which I feel like makes more sense actually. There's more that makes more sense because why would he just jump out? You know?
He was just going to kill himself. Struck with grief.
Yeah, he does seem to be quite a romantic, not a smart boy, but a romantic boy. And I mean, like, that's okay.
That's
That's
okay. As long
okay.
as you're nice. We talked about this recently. It's better to be nice and dumb.
Yes.
Like it's better
It's
to,
great
well,
if you
it's
can
better,
be nice and smart, but I mean,
of
like, if
course,
you
but
can't,
like for the partner, it's probably better that you're like nice and dumb rather than smart and mean.
true
But,
for
you know?
facts. Because then you're
Yeah.
dating a villain or you're married to a
Yeah.
villain. Like,
Yeah.
the villains are always smart, or at least they think they're smart, right? So that's the story of Rapunzel. Now, with a few, obviously, like all of these stories, there's a few kind of tweaks, and that alternate ending is kind of one of them. But some researchers say the story could be even older than the Italian version. And they think that it actually comes from, and I wanted to bring this up because you mentioned the twins. It comes from potentially different stories about sun goddesses from different cultures. So it's this
Oh.
idea of the sun being stored away, which would also explain
Mhm.
the long blonde hair,
Mhm.
this kind of like virtuous energy, and then being and then the deity being trapped and then rescued. So there's a bunch of older stories related to different deities and cultures that have that same kind of framework. And it's interesting to me because when you were talking about the twins, we were talking about Sleeping Beauty, and we were also talking about like the original story of that being Sun Moon Talia. So I
Yeah.
wonder if there's actually kind of some similarity or crossover in those two stories.
I mean, it's very possible. I wouldn't put it past it.
Yeah, you know, there's a specific
Interesting.
example from the Baltics of the solar goddess named Soleil. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but it has an accent aigu on the E, so I feel like it's a long E there. But, anyways, it's a Baltic solar goddess known in Lithuania and Latvia. And in that story, she gets locked in the tower by a king until she's freed. So,
Hmm.
like I said, there's also another story, and this one I didn't want to get into too much because I think it's probably one of my favorite ones that I would want to get into when we do Greek stuff. But in the
Okay.
backstory of Perseus, his mother, because the story of Perseus kind of starts with his mother and him are like in a coffin in the water and they get saved by the gods.
Right.
But the backstory of that is that his mother actually gets locked in a tower by her father, who is a king, because the Oracle of Delphi tells him that his daughter will bear a child that will kill the king. So, to stop her from getting pregnant or marrying or anything, he locks her in this tower. Little does he know,
Hmm.
for some reason, Greeks never got the memo that Zeus can fuck no matter where a person is.
Yes, he sure can.
Because I'm pretty sure that Zeus is like, I know he's definitely like half god, but I'm pretty sure he's one of Zeus's like half human children.
Like a demigod.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
Yeah.
because Perseus is like my favorite story, and I think if I can remember correctly, it's one of those situations where he comes down like a golden rain and like washes over her, and like now she's pregnant. You know what I mean? And then basically the king is super pissed because she's pregnant. So, but he can't kill her because it's his daughter and he loves her. So he casts her in this weird coffin boat thing and goes away. Honestly, on a side note of that, if
That's
you ever get
fair.
the chance to watch the old Perseus movie, Clash of the Titans from the 80s, watch it. Don't watch the
Oh,
newer
really?
one. Don't watch the newer one. It's trash. I've never hated a movie so much in my life. The newer one, which is
It's a
old now, I think it
bold
came out in like
statement.
I don't care. Like I'm obsessed. I love this was my favorite story growing up. It's got everything. It's got Medusa, Perseus, it's got Pegasus, it's got a golden
Nice.
owl. Like what's
I
not
don't
to
think I
love?
ever watched it. Yeah,
Oh, the old
I never
one's
watched
so
it.
good. The old one's so good.
Mm.
The new one is not good. They just turned it into like a like an action drama. Bleh. Anyway,
Yeah, of
watch
course.
watch the old one. It's really good.
Okay.
I feel like even the new one is old now. I feel like Clash of Titans came out like years and years ago. But let's put it this way:
It was a while ago. Yeah.
There's a reason they didn't make a trilogy out of it. Because these days, anything with good steam can become a trilogy at least. You know what I mean? So it wasn't good. But anyways, I digress. We'll get into that in another time. But there's a lot of stories that kind of have this reference in around it, and it's kind of what we were talking about earlier in relation to what for whatever reason kings love to be locking up their daughters in towers to protect them or to protect themselves or whatever. It's strange, but it seems to be like a motif that is relevant from early storytelling, and
Interesting.
that's yeah.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I
That's
I mean, there's no
that's
way to feel about it. It's just things that
it's just what it
probably
was. No, I understand that. I just yeah.
happened, you know? But yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, I don't think any of us feel good about that. Nobody wants like
No.
some innocent girl who like didn't do shit to be locked up in a tower,
No.
you know?
No.
But I think we come from a past that's kind of, we come from a violent history, guys. And it's prevalent in early stories. So yeah, in
Yes.
how do you say his name again? The Italian guy, Jean Battista or
I
Guillaume?
think so.
Okay,
Well, I don't know. Jean Baptiste Basile?
yeah, I like the way you say it. It's so nice. It rolls off the tongue so well when you do it. So like I said earlier, his original name for the story actually translate in English to parsley. And there are different versions of the story. So this version of the story differs from later versions as in his version, it's the wife who steals the plant, not the husband.
Oh, okay.
And
So she gets it for herself.
yeah, and in this
Okay.
version, the maiden is actually taken by not a witch, but an ogress, like an ogre, a female ogre.
Oh,
Yeah, which is cool because
okay.
I was like, oh, all of a sudden we're seeing some ogres coming up in these stories, which I've never, obviously, I've never seen outside of Shrek. And the ogress takes the girl, the maiden, as a child rather than as a baby. So she takes her when she's older. And the and in his version, the maiden and the prince are not separated for years to be reunited at the end. Most importantly, this version of the story contains like something called a flight scene,
Hmm.
which is kind of weird. It's a weird thing that we don't know from the story that we know, but basically when they are escaping, so basically the princess, or I guess she's not a princess, but Rapunzel and the prince are like in the Italian version, they take off, they actually do take off together, and the
Hmm.
ogress is chasing them. And so the girl uses magic acorns that turn into animals to distract the ogress while they run away. So there are
Okay.
some like rando magical elements that maybe that whole thing got, I think, got left out in the Grimm's version, but in
Yeah.
the Italian version there's a whole
It's a
thing.
little more fantastical.
Well, also there's something to do with, it's this same idea of Jack and the Beanstalk, like the three
Hmm.
beans that grow the
Hmm.
beanstalk, three magical acorns. So I guess it's like this idea of like these three magical things from nature that like do something magical. You know what I mean?
Do
Um,
we know what what animals they turn into?
no, I didn't
No.
look. I don't
Hmm.
know. I guess we could find out. We should find, I would love to find like these books, like the Italian version and then the French version, but like translated
And
into
translate them.
English. I don't know if that was bad or not, but just so I would fully understand, I'd like that. In the French variation, this is actually super interesting and probably is the darkest kind of part of this whole story. So in the French variation, it's really interesting because Charlotte Rose de Camon de la Force, what a name. She wrote her adaptation called Personnette, which is so cute. I love that name. Oh. She was so, but at the time that she wrote it, she was actually confined to an abbey because she had done something that was considered like a misconduct by King Louis XIV. So she was
Oh,
a
well,
part
that
of
could
the,
be any number of things.
yeah, that could literally
That could-
range from like her having an affair and getting caught to her not sleeping with the king and him not liking it. Like it could be like a whole range of things, but she was totally a part of all of those salons and the things that we've talked about
Mhm.
in the first season of our podcast. So if you don't know what we're talking about here, all you have to do is listen to the first season because we get into
Yeah.
all of that stuff around Versailles. But apparently she did something that was naughty. So she was a part of the inner court. So she was forced to go spend the rest of her time in an abbey. And an abbey is like where monks live, or I'm assuming where nuns lived in this case.
Mhm.
So um, maybe she was pregnant. They always send pregnant women to nunneries. But
Always.
but the interesting thing is that that's all speculation. But the interesting thing is that she was confined while
Mhm.
she wrote her version. And
So she probably relates to
yeah,
Rapunzel in a lot of
which is
ways.
what makes me think that she decided to kind of like retell the story with her version, because in her version we see almost all the elements that we know in the classic Rapunzel tale, and it's pretty much
Mhm.
the same versions that the Brothers Grimm keep in, and it includes the maiden's like out of wedlock pregnancy. Oh
Mm.
shit! I didn't even think of that. Oh,
Okay.
okay. Oh
Okay.
damn. So the villain's trickery leading to the prince going blind, and the birth of the twins, and the tears of the maiden restoring the prince's sight. Oh, so maybe she was just kind of writing her own happy ending. Oh, that's dark.
That's really sad. That's kind
That's
of
so
tragic.
French. I'm so sorry, but that sounds so real. I didn't put that together when I was first doing the research of this out of wedlock pregnancy of them two, like correlating with
Yeah.
her being like locked in an abbey. I didn't like fully connect the
Yeah.
dots on that. Again, we're speculating, but damn, doesn't that sound like that's exactly what it was?
It sounds very plausible.
Yeah.
It really does.
After everything that we've learned about the French court, and I think it was in our spooky season when I covered that very famous French witch who was like
Yeah.
doing all of like the dirty dealings for the
Yeah.
nobles in Versailles.
La Voisin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
Yeah.
man, that feels
Yeah.
real. Oh my god. So anyways, yeah, shoot. I didn't even put that all together. That's kind of where my research ends, but I just feel like I had an aha moment in the very end of that thing.
That I feel like yes, it's speculation, but it's very, very probable.
I mean, it practically paints its own picture.
Yeah.
Like you can't
That's
say
kind of
it.
sad if it is true
Super
that
sad.
that's her writing her own ending, her own happy ending, because you
See,
know
because
that she'd be stuck in that nunnery.
when I read the part about like the tears falling into his eyes and his sight restoring, I was like, this is so romantic and so in line with like French romanticism. You know what I
I
mean? Like
know.
making
Meanwhile, my
something magic.
cynical mind goes, "How? This is
No, but
absolute
you know what?
bullshit."
Like whatever. No, who cares? It totally that stacks up. Like that was a very valid question. And the reality is it didn't happen. Probably, most like well, obviously, it didn't happen. And that woman probably had to like give birth to her baby, that it got adopted out. And it's like maybe
Huh.
she was almost like reliving that. I don't know. I'm making this shit up at this point, but I almost can feel that like that's what happened just in all of the research we've done around like
I kind
Versailles,
of
all
wonder.
of the shit that was going on in that area at the time. Like it just feels like that's what it was, you know?
I wonder if it's kind of based on a true story in a sense, in like any sort of way, because there is this Saint Barbara, who, and I like very fuzzy on the details and I don't
Mm,
remember what year this would have been, but it was kind of like what you were talking about before, where fathers will like protect their child by locking them in a tower
mm-hmm.
and like keeping them away from prying eyes. So she was really beautiful, and I think her dad did that to her, and she was really, really angry, and they argued about it. And she'd be like, "I have my own free will," and da 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 da. But he locked her up in a tower
Yeah, I actually think
and then
there was
prevented
like
her from leaving.
there was like a list of different stories that this could be referenced from, and I think there was one about a saint actually, and that might
So
be
it
the
might be
one.
this one, like Saint Barbara.
Yeah,
And I wonder because, well, like Italy loves saints. Everyone, everywhere in Europe loves saints,
true
but
that.
like
But
Italy
Italy
loves
loves
saints.
saints. No, that's a
And
real
I just
statement.
wonder if there's some correlation. I wish I actually knew more details about the story, but I know that she was actually locked away in the tower. And I think, I'm not 100% certain, but I think, and I don't know how, that she was eventually beheaded
Hmm.
by her father.
By her
Eventually.
father.
I think so.
These guys suck.
I think so. So, yeah.
Well,
We should really do a thing about saints and biblical
we
stuff, though.
should. Biblical
Anyways.
stuff is so good, but it's just all like it's very like it's so deep, and also like there's no happy endings.
Nope. But
In
that was
fact,
really cool.
yeah.
What?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that was really cool because I had never really gone into the details of Rapunzel. It just
Same.
never appealed to me.
Me neither.
It like it never appealed to me. So I don't think I ever read it, to be completely honest. And it's
I,
just from bits and pieces that I'd hear from other people where
yeah.
I was kind of like, there's a witch and a tower and a prince in here.
Yeah, I read it in the Grimm, like I have like an English version of the Grimm's fairy tales in my mom's house, and so I read all of
Hmm.
them when I was little. So I remember reading the story, but I don't know why it was very vivid to me when I read it. So I never like I liked it, but I also didn't I don't know. It's just again, it was not one that I ever
Yeah.
really attached closely to. But I know I found it really interesting, and I can't believe I buried such a lead on the French writer. Like I just like kind of had that revelation while we were talking about it. But that feels,
Yeah.
oh look, our cats have come to say hello to each other as they do. Anyways, that's Rapunzel. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Sorry, our cats always come and hang out with us while we're doing these podcasts, and very often they come at the same time, and it's bizarre. We don't know what's going on, but I think they just hear us talking and they're like, "Okay, time for my attention now."
It's exactly what happens. Um, but if you're interested in seeing any cat photos or videos, you can check out our Instagram page, Allegory Story Podcast, because I'll post something there in the next couple of days.
And just to let you guys know, I know I've classified myself multiple times as a witch in this story, but I swear if you're pregnant and you want some parsley and I have it, I'll give it to you. Just come and ask. Like,
Just come and ask. Just don't steal stuff.
I mean,
At
like I'd
least
rather not find
don't steal
people.
stuff from, a witch.
Yeah, I'd rather not find people creeping out in my garden at nighttime, but in general, like, just say you need some parsley, man. I mean, I guess you don't really need to worry about it these days because there's grocery stores. See what
Yeah.
capitalism has done for society? No, I'm just joking. That was a bad joke. I'm not pro capitalism.
Uh, okay, so yeah, that's the Instagram. And then you can also send us an email, allegorystorypodcast@gmail.com. And we will see you next time for some more fairy tale fantastical story time.
Okay, we'll see you then.